What if I told you that right now, millions of people are living with a debilitating condition that's so misunderstood, many of them don't even know that they have it? That condition is obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. I'm Dr. Patrick McGrath, the Chief Clinical Officer of NoCD. And in the 25 years I've been treating OCD, I've met so many people who are suffering from the condition in silence, unaware of just what it was. OCD can create overwhelming anxiety and fear around what you value most, make you question your identity, beliefs, and morals, and drive you to perform mentally and physically draining compulsions or rituals. Over my career, I've seen just how devastating OCD can be when it's left untreated. But help is available. That's where NoCD comes in. NoCD is the world's largest virtual therapy provider for obsessive compulsive disorder. Our licensed therapists are trained in exposure and response prevention therapy, a specialized treatment proven to be incredibly effective for OCD. So visit nocd.com to schedule a free 15-minute call with our team. That's nocd.com.
If you're a parent or share a fridge with someone, Instacart is about to make grocery shopping so much easier. Because with family carts, you can share a cart with your partner and each add the items you want. Since between the two of you, odds are you'll both remember everything you need. And this way, you'll never have to eat milkless cereal again. So minimize the stress of the weekly shop with family carts. Download the Instacart app and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Plus, enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Service fees apply for 3 orders in 14 days. Excludes restaurants. So let me just start this by saying, I love my husband. However, when it comes to our sleeping preferences, we couldn't be more different. That's why the Sleep Number Smart Bed has totally changed the game for us. Ever since we got it, we both sleep through the night at our ideal firmness and wake up feeling refreshed and resentment-free. Seriously, once we both found our ideal sleep number setting, we just dial it in and let the bed adjust to our bodies throughout the night. Plus, our Climate Series bed keeps us nice and cool through those warm summer months. Why choose a Sleep Number Smart Bed? So you can choose your ideal comfort on either side. And now get early access to Memorial Day deals. Save 30% on our most popular smart bed. Exclusively at a Sleep Number store near you. See store or sleepnumber.com for details.
Welcome to Aran Island Discs, a podcast series where we talk to Irish people from different walks of life as they reflect on their own journeys. Join me, Russell McDermott, as we explore the many aspects of Irishness and what it means to each of our guests through life's ups and downs. Annemarie O'Connor, welcome to Aran Island Discs.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. Now, the first question is a tricky one. Have you been to Aran Islands ever?
I'll tell you what, but that's because I'm Aran adjacent. My mom is from Inishbofin, and I grew up pretty much on Inishbofin. I learned to walk there. I had my first kiss there. Woo. I worked during college in the restaurant there. And my two eldest sisters, live there. Well, my eldest sister has a second home there, but my mom lives there and my second eldest sister lives there as well. So we're very much kind of connected to Boffin. But I have to say, I was watching this TikTok. There's a guy called Cody Laveau, and he has a series called A Redneck Abroad. And he went to Aran during the 2 weeks that we hopefully weren't our summer that just passed. And it looked glorious. And I kept thinking to myself, I actually should go to Aran. I need to go to Aran because I'm mortified that I haven't been.
Yeah, well, the trouble is I've been twice, I think, in memory. And the first time I was there was one of those perfect summer days and the place looked idyllic. And the second time the same. I'm afraid to go back in case we get it like the weekend I just had in Westport where the rain was blowing in sheets.
I remember I was living, well, my mom lives on Boffin now, but we would spend all of our holidays there, and we had spent Christmas, and I had to go back in for an exam from what memory serves me. And there was no boat because the weather was so egregious. Yeah. And we were stuck there for the guts of a couple of days, and the wind was blowing. And I remember suiting up just to go outside to get coal to put on the fire. And just that feeling my mom always says to me, living on the island during the summer, of course, it's idyllic, but you're only really an islander when, you can last the storm season and still come back,
Yeah. And what is Inishbofin like then? Is it similar? It's not rocky, or is it a different type of landscape?
It's beautiful. It's. I remember somebody once described it as Jamaica with sheep, because the waters are so blue, and it's. I just have very fond memories of growing up there. It felt there was a sense of freedom, and the beaches are pristine, and the water is equally pristine, and I think that for me as a kid, because I grew up on Long Island. So, I went from one island to another, and we used to like keep cool in the pool in our backyard because it would be 90 degrees Fahrenheit.
And 85% humidity,
humid. Yeah. And then you'd go to somewhere like Inishbofin and you'd be wearing shorts and a sweater and wellies, but you'd go into the water and you'd be freezing, but it was bracing, and you had like two extremes, but somewhere in the middle you found that sweet spot that created memories.
So you're a real island girl, you're Long Islander, Inishbofin Island, and Ireland the island. So you've got three ways.
You do.
And the States, what, your family immigrated there, was it?
My mom immigrated to the States when she was 18, and my aunt had already been living there for a few years. She met my dad. My dad unfortunately passed when I was 4, but they had always wanted to move back. So I was 12 when she moved us back. So we kind of emigrated in reverse. It was 1985. So everyone was going the opposite way, and we came to Ireland. So but like I said, we had like spent a lot of time as kids growing up and spending our summers, or every couple of summers in Ireland. And so it wasn't like it was still a culture shock, but I think we had I had an easier time of it had I just come over,
And where do you fall in the family? Are you the youngest, the oldest, or?
I'm the youngest of 5 girls.
Right. So they all say you had it easy.
No, not so much. I remember, it's funny you should say that. I was talking to my sister on the phone the other day, and she said, I remember you came like from Long Island where, you wore boat shoes to, to school and, shorts in the summer. And then you had to, around June, because we went to school until it was elementary school. So it was late June. So you were allowed to wear shorts, kind of when the weather got, shorts appropriate. And then she said, I remember you being measured for your school uniform. You were like a rabbit in the headlights, like, what the heck is happening here, And then I was with the nuns for a year and before I went into secondary school. So it was, it was, I think I was talking to my mom last night. We were talking about of all things, of course we were, the weather. And I said, Mom, do you remember when we moved in 85? The weather was so bad. It was the 23rd of July, I'll never forget. And it just seemed to rain from the day we arrived. And one of my best friends, Neil, was saying, yeah, but Annemarie, you put the curse on us, because in June of that year, we had this glorious weather, and then it just went hot. And I said, I'll do you one better. In the summer of 88, my mom said there were, out of 90 days, I think there was something like, I can't remember if it was like 83 or 88, but something very high. Like, I think we got a week's worth of non-rainy days. I wouldn't even go as far as to say they were sunny. They probably just weren't raining.
Just didn't rain.
Yeah. And I remember I felt like a petri dish. I thought I was going to like start growing spores, but as a younger girl, maybe I'm just looking at it through a different lens. I don't remember being like feeling down. Like, I know now if I look out at like the day isn't exactly great today, and I keep thinking, oh God, I don't think my serotonin levels can really handle this. But when you're younger, you just kind of get on with it. Yeah. Mom said, you were so young. You were out like, in the backyard with your cousins, playing, doing whatever. You didn't care that it was raining.
Correct.
And yeah, there is.
And I think we all have the same thing. We not misremember. We join the days up like that, and the rain is mixed in with the sunny days. We remember. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. So it's funny. I wasn't like I didn't have it easy coming over.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't have it hard either. I think.
And would the sisters agree with you? Would they?
I think they have their own experience, definitely, because they were older.
Yeah.
But for me, like I think I just rolled with it. And I think that from my own perspective, I can only speak from my lived experience. That's a consequence of youth. I think there's an elasticity to being young. There's a Buddhist phrase called bend in the river. And it's like going with the flow, but not in the sense of like Jimmy Buffett wasting away in Margaritaville. It's more like life can throw a lot at you. And in order to get around these kind of sharp edges of life, you've got to have that sense of, that elasticity that I said that I felt I had as a kid.
Yeah. And whereabouts were you in LA, Long Island?
A little place called Blue Point. It was a bit like Dawson's Creek. That's what I always thought it was. It was idyllic, and there was a bait shop. I'll never forget. You weren't allowed to have any commercial entities within the town. In fact, it wasn't a town. We had a township. Our junior high school and our high school were part of a township with the adjacent town called Bayport. So like our towns were too small. So we had, a joint high school and a joint junior high. Yeah. But I remember there was a place my mom used to bring me. It was on the beach. It was called Flo's Ice Cream Parlor. And it was from the 1920s. And written in the deed, it said that if there were ever to be a fire and the place burned down, you could never rebuild on that. So it was like a Shake Shack. It was lovely. And like for my communion, I asked for a bait box and a fishing rod. That's what you do, and, for your communion. It was charmed. It was a lovely place again to be a kid.
Yeah,
there was space to be a kid.
Yeah, but Bothell must have been the same then, idyllic.
Yeah,
in its own way.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. There was definitely space to be imaginative. I remember my friend and I were talking about it down at there were these fish stores down at the edge of the pier on the East End.
Yeah.
And we used to, we'd take one each and, we'd play house, and each one would be our relative houses, and we'd decorate them with, rocks and shells and what have you. And there was a real sense of, don't come home until I call you for lunch, or that sort of thing. And you learned how to you learned how to let your imagination run wild. And a lot of the times it was like, oh, what can we do? And we'd play kick the can, and we put on a theater show for the locals, like my mom and my granny, And it was. I just remember all the things that we did as kids, and I think it stood us in good stead.
And that gives you the drive that you've been entrepreneurial in your own way, does it?
I think the entrepreneurial bit, I didn't know I had it. I always thought I was going to go and be a university professor and like teach English, because English was my love. But I have like Sagittarius rising. I'm a Taurian. I follow astrology, but Sagittarius is known for, traveling and spreading its wings and having that more of a flexible spirit. And I remember when I first had my first job coming out of college, it was just doing like 9 to 5 teaching, covering somebody's maternity leave. And they asked me to stay for the duration of the term because the teacher had decided that she wasn't coming back. And it just threw me. All of a sudden, I felt like, oh my God, like felt trapped. And maybe that was just a consequence of being in my 20s and feeling that I didn't want to be teacher and then wake up 20 years down the road and still be a teacher. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted to try different things. And I think looking back on just my life and my career, it suits me more to be like definitely to make the decisions about what it is that I do, even though there's an incredible amount of uncertainty that surrounds that. I'm okay with the uncertainty.
So you're the end of November or early December, are you?
No, I'm Taurus,
so you're the
but
beginning.
I'm May 18th actually.
May 18th, all right.
So I never saw myself as being like entrepreneurial, but I suppose I am.
Yeah.
I always think of entrepreneurs as CEOs.
Yeah.
And
people get
I'm
caught
definitely
up in that. Yeah, that's the image people have. But what I pick up is your self-energy and your own, like from your little shows and the way you work now freelance. You obviously have that inner drive and motivation to do it. So that's entrepreneurial to me.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. When people say you have to be passionate about something, I remember hearing someone say, what is the worst part of your job? And you have to be willing to, excuse my vulgarity, but eat the shit sandwich. Like how many shit sandwiches are you willing to eat in order to get to where you want to be? Because every passion has a flip side.
Correct.
Every passion has something boring or like soul sucking that's going to test you to see where your limits are and how much you want it. And how far you're, what you're prepared to do.
And get up every morning and motivate yourself to keep going amidst all the SHIT sandwiches, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
And not many people kind of believe that's what they like to know. They go in from 9 to 5, that's their job. And the motivations of a different kind.
Also I think with entrepreneurial work, there's still admin. You still have to file your own taxes. Like you've got to do, June will come and you're going to have to pre-do your taxes, start the whole tax process.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, great. Here we go again. I just paid them and now
Would somebody do it for me?
but it's like part of, you have to be willing to do all this stuff, pay for your own insurance, pay for this, you're always out of pocket paying for stuff. So, and people say, oh, isn't it great that you can do what you love for a living? It's like, it
sounds great. But it's not that simple. I know what you're saying.
But it is, but there's a lot. I think people don't realize that there's a lot you sacrifice to get to live that life.
Correct.
And to do what you want to do.
Right. And then in professional terms, or you're describing yourself, how would that sound? What does that sound like, Annemarie? When you meet somebody in the elevator and ask you, what do you do? How do you summarize that for them?
I say, to most people, I say, I'm an author and a journalist. Yeah, I'm an author and a journalist. I've done everything from like podcasting to TV work and radio work and lots of media work. The majority of what I do and what I see myself doing is continuing to write books and continuing to work in some journalistic capacity. So I may be eating my words and find myself doing something else. But or I just say I'm a writer. Yeah. It's sometimes easier to say, oh, I'm a writer. And if people ask, well, what do you write? And you can say,
what book do you write?
Books. Yeah, I write books and I write, I write for the Irish Examiner or something like that. I just kind of make it a bit more simple instead of saying, well, how long do you have?
And I remember watching with Tommy, and you're a communicator, you write and you talk. And when you've developed your own challenges recently with Parkinson's, do you think I know you don't feel like you're an advocate, but it has helped you articulate to other people what you face as a challenge now every day?
I believe my advocacy with Parkinson's disease has taught me a lot, not only about my own, what I've what I've learned through this journey. But I feel, I think when I first was asked to share my story, I did so because my editor, who is also a dear friend of mine, because we've worked with each other for, God knows how many years at this stage, since 2008. I trusted her with my story. I don't think I would have trusted anybody else with it.
Yeah.
So when she encouraged me to share it, I knew that I would be helping people. I wasn't prepared for the onslaught of messages from people. That's what I found quite humbling. But what it inspired in me, when I understood from other people who said, I haven't shared my story because I'm a caretaker for my mother and I have children, or I haven't told my children because my children are too young and I'm afraid they'll worry, or I haven't told my boss because I'm afraid that I will be fired or managed out or made redundant, and I'm the primary, breadwinner in our family. I, on the other hand, only have myself to deal with. I am my own person. I'm single. I'm not going to be fired from my job for sharing my story. I don't have other people depending on me. And so I felt also, with my platform as a journalist and as as somebody who works for a newspaper, who had a podcast as a result of sharing my story, who has social media, who has a built-in community. I was in a position to share my story and to maybe be that accidental advocate for others who maybe weren't in a position to share their own story. I'd never encourage anybody to share their story if they're not in a position to. But what I think what came out of me sharing my own story is that people who felt that they had symptoms were able to go and get that, go see a GP or go see a neurologist. People who hadn't shared their story felt seen and felt heard. People who maybe were Parkinson's adjacent, whose parents had Parkinson's, suddenly felt that they could understand their parents better. And this is strictly through the feedback that I've gotten from others. And I think when you get that sort of feedback, it emboldens you to continue. Because why have this pointless disease unless I can do something with it? I get no points for stoicism, no points for sitting at home and, oh, Annemarie's great, she just gets on with it. Like it's going to take everything from you at some stage. So like in the meantime, why not just fight it? And fighting it is such a strong term. And I hear people saying fighting Parkinson's. Parkinson's is always going to find a way to create some sort of sorcery with your life. It's going to find ways to challenge you. So I think the best you can do is for me, it was important to kind of disable this viewpoint of Parkinson's as something that happens to elderly men. It happens to women. It happens to women younger than me. It happens to people who are under the age of 21 who have juvenile Parkinson's, although that's incredibly rare. But there are 10 million people in the world with Parkinson's, over 10 million. 18,000 live in Ireland. Of that 18,000, about 10% are considered early onset. So that's 1,800. So, we're still a very niche kind of collective, but it's important to give that niche a voice and to show the many faces of Parkinson's. Parkinson's has now surpassed Alzheimer's as the number one, as the number one neurodegenerative condition globally.
Wow.
So it's incredibly important that we get this conversation started and that we continue it and that we support those people who are going through it. And there are some people, there are many people, I'm lucky. I've gotten to a position with my medication that I'm able to get through my days quite seamlessly. But, we always have good days and bad days. But overall, like it was a challenge. It took, the guts of about 14 months to get to that sweet spot. But once I did, I've been I count my lucky stars. I really do. I've seen people in wheelchairs. I've seen people walking with two walking sticks. I've seen people who, and they're my age, who have lost their ability. They have something called masking, and they've lost their ability to show emotion because
Oh yeah, the facial.
Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it robs you of your, it can rob you of your dignity. It can rob you of your joy. And I just think, why, you can give it the two fingers up as well. And we can only do that by really educating and raising awareness. And if I can do my best with what I have, then I'll feel that it wasn't for nothing.
And you don't feel a burden of being an advocate, in inverted commas, of doing that. I mean, that interview I saw some time ago, live at the time with Tommy Turner, was so evocative. My uncle had Parkinson's, and so I know the process. He was older, obviously, but you captured a lot that night. And you always worry that the burden of that, of, as you say, suddenly being the unintended consequence or advocate, is a burden in itself. But obviously, you learn to manage that as well.
I think so. You can see it as, I don't see it as a burden. I think I was shocked by how quickly things escalated, but that's only because people felt connected.
Yes.
And there wasn't that person that I maybe filled a gap of what Parkinson's looked like for certain people. They could say, oh my gosh, it's not that there's anything wrong with the elderly male stereotype, but that's exactly what it is. It's a stereotype. It's much broader viewpoint of what Parkinson's looks like. I think I just maybe, set the cat amongst the pigeons, and people didn't expect to see somebody young and working in fashion to have Parkinson's disease and to be going through the emotional turmoil. I mean, I think above all else, in terms of being an advocate, the important thing to remember is to always put yourself first, because you can't serve unless you are.
You get swallowed up then,
Yeah, you can't serve people until you've served yourself, until you've, dealt with the emotional fallout. You've grieved the life that you once had. You've made the changes. You understand where your position is with this condition. I am happy to be a spokesperson and to raise awareness, but my whole philosophy is that we all have a story to tell. And storytelling is a form of advocacy. And in sharing our stories, we can start to create change, because we create like an anthology of different perspectives and different lived experiences. I have a TikTok called A Walk in the Parkinsons, and I've noticed it in the past 3 months since I started it. There are so many new faces, and they're Irish as well. And it's so great to see. So that when somebody goes in and puts in Parkinson's symptoms into the search bar, they're not going to come up with maybe just a neurologist talking about Parkinson's.
Right.
They're going to see a young girl in her 30s or a guy in his 40s. And they're going to see people who are still, for the most part, living full lives. And living full lives.
Yeah, and for you, it happened quite quickly from the minute you didn't relatively.
It did.
And how did you find the resilience the speed, when I read of how quickly you were confirmed of early onset? How did you dig deep to find that word that we all kind of struggle with, resilience, or the manner in which to deal that mentally?
Resilience is always something I say it's a bit like Irishness. You only think of your Irishness when you're abroad.
Yeah.
And I think you only dig deep for that resilience when you need it. I was definitely thrown, knocked for six, because this was under the backdrop of COVID, if you remember.
Yeah.
I was living alone. So what started as a frozen shoulder, a really bad pain in my shoulder, and I couldn't identify the provenance. And that quickly became a shake in my hand. And then 2 weeks, that shake got worse. And then from Christmas by the time I was able to see my sister, she was going, "What's happened to your hand? That is very obvious. That's not a small shake that you said on the phone. This is like a tremor. Make sure you see your GP." And I did that when we were allowed to see our GPs in March of
Yeah.
this was of 2002. Between March and December, I had 3 MRIs that came out clear, but there was quite a number of symptoms that started appearing. So I had everything from my tremor went from my fingers to my shoulder and became quite jerky and aggressive. I had like pains in my legs. I had restless legs. I was dragging my right leg. There was no swing in my right arm. I hadn't really put these
Join the dots
hadn't
effectively.
connected the dots.
Yeah.
Yeah, hadn't connected the dots. And I remember someone saying to me, "But surely you must have known." And I said, "It's amazing what you'll do. It's amazing how being deluded
Yeah.
is protective mechanism."
Correct.
I think it was, like I said, it was during COVID. I had lost a lot of work because I couldn't style photo shoots.
Yeah.
I was at home. I was trying to think of, oh my God, what am I going to do financially? I was also going through perimenopause. So I was blaming it on that.
Yeah.
And then I had this, number of symptoms that were developing. And by the time my third MRI came through, that was clear, I had at this stage wasn't able to brush my teeth. And this happened in like a number of days. I couldn't open a bag of coffee. My hands started cupping in. It was like, I was writing Christmas cards and I remember saying, "Jesus, they look like ransom notes." Auntie Mary isn't going to get a card this year. But so my GP, who's incredible, she just said, "The dots aren't joining, the math isn't mathing. I'm going to send you to A&E tomorrow, and just be prepared to stay for the day. You'll be there from 9 till about 5, and you'll probably see a bunch of people who will do blood tests and whatnot, but we'll get to the bottom of it." And that's exactly what happened. Saw nurses, saw doctors, saw neurologists, and finally saw the man who would be my consultant neurologist, who in a matter of 20 minutes, I think, made a determination and just said, "You have early onset Parkinson's," after doing a number of tests himself and looking at my background. And it just threw me because women in their 40s don't get Parkinson's. I was like, okay, Michael J. Fox got it when he was 29 and Muhammad Ali was 42, but those are exceptions to the rules. Like, where do I fit into all of this? So it's when you are dealing then with the practicalities of, I had to go back and see my consultant and bring a friend with me as a second set of ears. And, you're dealing with the medication and you're dealing with changing your how you move through the world. That's what I found to be the most difficult, apart from my medication, which took, like I said, about a year to really
get the balance.
Get the balance, trying different, combinations until we found the right one. That took its physical toll, but what really took its biggest toll was how the mundane things, it really chips away at those small things, like how you move through the world, your habits. They're so entrenched. And then you have to adopt this military-like precision when you take your medication, when your hydration, your exercise. Everything is like a time-bound plan. And that completely eviscerates any sort of, spontaneity. And that's what I miss the most. I felt like an emptiness, felt like the most boring person in the room. And then you feel that, your work is slipping away, and there was so much to kind of take on board. And it's your resilience is, people kept using that word and saying, "You're so brave, you're so resilient." And I thought, well, brave, I haven't gone out to war, so I don't see how I'm so brave. But the resilience, I definitely think I got from, and I owe it to like my mother and my grandmothers. I just think I've seen what they've gone through. And when you have somebody, whether it's your ancestors or a friend or just somebody you admire or look up to, and you see the road that they followed and how difficult it was,
Mm.
it can make yours seem a lot easier. I definitely think my grandmother's had a very like my grandmother from Inishbofin, her mother died at the age of 10, and
Wow.
then when she was 10 rather, and then when she was 17 her father was killed in the Cleggan disaster.
Wow.
And she became head of her family, and she had to put her 5 siblings through school. And she used to make Aran sweaters for Stanley's of Clifton. And she had she was so capable. And I remember I said to my sister, Margaret, I said, I don't know. I look back at Nana in particular, and I just think her capability and her ability to turn her hand to anything just inspires me so much. Um, and these are the strengths that the Martin Seligman, he's the father of the positive psychology movement. He talks about our strengths, how they are kind of the key to achieving personal satisfaction, but I think they're also the key to releasing that sense of resilience from inside of us. Because strengths are something that they're not like talents that are innate. They're something that's voluntary and need to be cultivated. So it's like perspective. You can see the bright side of a fairly crappy situation, or self-regulation. You can make yourself go for that run when you'd rather be sitting on the sofa watching Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
So
But are Irish people any more particular resilient than other people, or is that a narrative you'd like to believe, or is there any truth in Irish as in resilience in our traditional war stories, inverted commas, of our lives?
I think Ireland as a nation, like historically, we've had so many, 800 years of oppression, you're looking at famine, you're looking at mass immigration. We've really had to deal with some very
Tough situation.
the darkest moments of our kind of
Yeah.
our history have brought about this resilience is something that's earned, I should say.
Yeah.
It's something that nobody wants to have to go through resilience. It brings
Absolutely.
out the best in you, but it only does that by dragging you through the mud.
Correct.
So
As someone
I
said,
think-
I've seen these definitions. It's like advancing despite adversity. It's not something you choose, even though Instagram has you believe resilience is a thing you buy in a pharmacy. Resilience is something you dig deep when you have to. You'd rather not have to, but if it's there, you have to rely on it to get you through what you consider. I had a stroke, Annemarie. So people say, aren't you admirable? You've done this. I had no choice. I got up. I went from running 10K to a wheelchair. You have to get on with it.
Yeah. You have to get on with it. And that's exactly it, Rossa.
Yeah.
You have to get on with it. Nobody wants to get on with it. You know what? And you hit the nail on the head with popular culture in particular. I think it was really spearheaded during COVID when, we talked about resilience, and every corporate wellness program had someone talking about resilience. Yeah. And I would debate whether any of them actually exercise their resilience.
Exactly.
They had like an MBA, fancy MBA, and they're talking.
They skip lunch in the cafeteria or something one day to get their exams. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. But the resilience is, like you said, you only dig deep when you have to, and nobody wants to have to do that. But it's something that we can. Yeah, it's something that's venerate. I think it just became very sellable.
Yeah,
became a widget. Yeah. Unfortunately, because we had to. Now, here's an example. The word Jesus. If we have to use this word again, pivot. When during COVID, so just say right now we're doing a Zoom. Video conferencing was always something you did with your colleagues over in the United States. Yeah. They weren't something that you did with the people that you worked with. Yeah. So this was something that we had to learn how to adapt and overcome, and then people started using that because people were panicked. They didn't know how to make money, how we were going to move, to how long COVID was going to last. But it's so funny how when COVID ended, I remember my sister saying, I think it brings out the best in people. I think people are being really nice. And I said, Margaret, I said, guarantee you. I said, once COVID is over, I
It's
said, people
over.
are going to go back to being the way they were.
And sure
And
did.
I think that's a natural thing though, because resilience, tell you what, nobody wants to be touting that forever.
No, no.
Like you want a bit of a break every
Yeah.
now and again.
Yeah.
Like having to be consistently resilient is exhausting as well.
Yeah. You don't want to have to dig deep. Trust me, as you know, you'd rather it was more relaxed. But hey, it became
Yeah.
trendy in the wellness era and the post-COVID and the Zoom chats as resilient people we are because we're getting through the COVID. Hey, it's very simple, guys.
But I think also it's a bit like I always think of Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, when Glenda says, you had it all along, Dorothy, so that sense of there's like she had all of the tools in her toolkit that she needed. So we do need to find it within, and we do need to we can dig deep, but it's like how deep is deep?
Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz is lovely and contained in very much the confines of Hollywood, but like sometimes I think to myself, there's some things that I'm still very worried about. And
Yeah, does the degenerative nature of Parkinson's worry you tremendously? How do you accept that part of it?
the degenerative part of Parkinson's does worry me, but what I've discovered or what I've come to terms with, exercise is one of the
Tools.
best forms of staving off PD. I'm not a fan of exercise. I'd much rather lie in the prone position on the sofa. But
Yeah.
I do things like walking, like I live in Cork, so I always have to walk everywhere. And with Cork, if you're familiar with it,
Yeah.
where there's a downhill, there's always an uphill.
Yeah.
And I make a point of, going to get my milk, from the shop and going down and going back up. And that's a certain amount of steps. And then going for an actual walk and then doing as much as I can, trying to keep as active as I can to just bring up those steps to, some days I'm like 10,000, other days I could be 20. So that's how I get my exercise. And I do find that it does huge amount with helping my Parkinson's.
Yeah, because
There
people
is
don't realize the rigidity and the stiffness that comes with it.
Yes, the stiffness and the rigidity.
Yeah.
My medication kind of handles that. For me, it's the tremors and it's the involuntary movements, and it's the restless legs and the pain. So the medication that I'm on has really helped that like considerably. But there's always going to be times of emotional stress and emotional upset will absolutely throw it. I would be the worst poker player, Rossa, because you can tell what
Yeah.
I'm feeling because my hands just start going. I'm like, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
So in terms of the degenerative, I take I've just had to adopt the philosophy. I'm feeling well now.
Yeah.
And I embrace the now. I get the most out of every single day. And I'm so thankful for where I am. I don't know where we're going to be. Like for example, if I could just take you back, my father was diagnosed with early onset juvenile diabetes when he was in his 30s.
Wow.
And yet he died of a brain hemorrhage when he was 37.
Wow.
So he had a chronic illness that my mom was very much worried about and how this was going to affect him. And he finally got to sweet spot because he was prone to going into diabetic coma and his diabetes was very bad. And he, with exercise and nutrition, he got it to a point where it was very manageable. And then life holds the pulled a fast one, and he died of something completely unrelated.
Yeah.
So the fact of the matter is I could walk out of my house tomorrow and be knocked over by the 220 from Carrigaline.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Stay indoors, please. Stay indoors.
But I could, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I could live my life as I am now in a state where I can manage it, or I may not be able to manage it, but I can't. What use is it for me to just spend that time worrying
About that, yeah. And does
That's all I
music
can
help
say.
you, Annemarie? Does music help you?
Music does. Music always helps.
Yeah.
I used to work, would you believe, a very long time ago in London for Kiss FM and Magic 105.4.
Wow.
And they were in the same room.
Yeah.
So we had our studios along the left-hand side, and there were banks of desks. So on one side was Kiss. So you'd hear, it was the early noughties. So it was Daniel Bedingfield, Gotta Get Through This, boop, 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 the UK garage.
Yeah.
And then on the other side would be Ronan Keating. And so we were somewhere in between, in the middle of the room. And there was a sonic kind of cluster that happened. You'd hear Ronan Keating mixed with Daniel Bedingfield, and we were smack in the middle of it. And I remember thinking, this is like a fever dream.
And who won in the end, Ronan or Bedingfield?
Oh, it was a fight to the death.
And there's a song that's traveled with you over the years, Annemarie, that's given you solace, strength, motivation, the lyrics, the sound of it.
I think there's two artists that I remember, one from when I was a teenager and one from when I was in my early 20s. And I think it's the lyrical content. Tori Amos, I remember buying Little Earthquakes when I was about 14. And then when I was around 21, I bought Alanis Morissette's Jagged Little Pill.
Yeah.
And I had the same reaction to both of them.
92. Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Around that, yeah. And I had such a visceral reaction to both of them. Visceral reaction to Alanis Morissette because it was just the sheer anger, and women weren't allowed to be angry. And I think she's like, All I Really Want, and like songs like that were just like a clarion call. And I remember Tori Amos felt there was a poet there, and I loved poetry. And I remember her songs like Mother, and they were just so beautiful. There was something so serene and sacred about how she expressed herself. And I think as women, they were very vulnerable, and they were very transparent. And that can be, when you're that vulnerable, that can be quite exposing. Yeah. And yet they were able to deal with it. I think there are two amazing artists that would stay with me. Yeah.
I agree with you. I mean, I know I was working in Boston at the time, and the American guy I worked with wouldn't let his daughter listen to Alanis. He thought there was bad language, and it was too tough for young girls to hear. It was probably the perfect thing for young girls to be listening to. It gave them power and understanding.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's like Black Lilith in astrology. She's like, she was this woman who was kind of chastised for embracing her femininity and her sexuality, and she was passed away. And it's an archetype, of course. Yeah. But I think Alanis Morissette definitely set and she's it's funny because when you see her being interviewed, and then you hear her voice, and you realize that women are layered in as much as men are. And, you can be soft and in your delivery, but you can have a fire within you at the same time. And I do think she definitely, for me, I think that was one of the most seminal artists and seminal albums, I think, definitely of the late 90s. I think she's iconic. She's iconic. She is.
And quotes, any come to mind that you would turn to or use? You're a
I
writer
never
yourself.
leave
You
this.
studied lit. You did all the English. You must have someone out there.
I tell you what, you're going to laugh now because
Some Mickey
I'll
Mouse or some
remember.
Winnie the Pooh or something.
I'll think of something after this call. But there's something on that I keep seeing on the internet, and it makes me laugh. Go big or go home. People who say go big or go home seriously underestimate my willingness to go home. And I love that because I'm such a home bird,
Yeah.
and like given half a chance and a bag of peanut M&Ms, I'm at home, lads, and even when I go to an event, I'm like, how soon can I leave?
Get out of here.
Think to myself.
Hey, that's not the public image you have, a fashion editor being out there and about. So we know the truth, though. I mean,
know the
I
truth.
quote this from Brendan O'Brien a lot. When anyone asks me about the Irish character, I say, look at the trees, maimed, stark, misshapen, but ferociously tenacious. Would you say that's
Yeah.
Irish?
I think so. I think, however, I think Irishness is changing. I always see Irishness as there's a narrative through line, but a load of individual stories. I think everyone, as a culture, like as we diversify, I think it's a beautiful thing. Our meaning of Irishness broadens, and we get to accommodate these new perspectives and ways of living. But ultimately, there's that archetype of the rebellious, resilient, cheeky, gregarious, warm nation. And I think that stands as like a lodestone or a North Star, especially when we're abroad. It gives us a sense of like identity and purpose. And it's something to be proud of as well. It steers, it's kind of keeps us aligned with these kind of qualities that we want to embody.
Annemarie O'Connor, thank you for travelling from Inishbofin to join us in Aran.
Thank you for having me.
I can't tell you how often I hear, oh, I'm a little OCD. I like things neat. That's not OCD. I'm Howie Mandel, and I know this because I have OCD. Actual OCD causes relentless unwanted thoughts. What if I did something terrible and forgot? What if I'm a bad person? Why am I thinking this terrible thing? It makes you question absolutely everything, and you'll do anything to feel better. OCD is debilitating, but it's also highly treatable with the right kind of therapy. Regular talk therapy doesn't cut it. OCD needs specialized therapy. That's why I want to tell you about NoCD. NoCD is the world's largest virtual therapy provider for OCD. Their licensed therapists provide specialized therapy virtually, and it's covered by insurance for over 155 million Americans. If you think you might be struggling with OCD, visit nocd.com to schedule a free 15-minute call and learn more. That's nocd.com.
These days, work is in trouble. We've outsourced most of our manufacturing to other countries. And with that, we sent away good jobs and our capability to make things. American Giant is a clothing company that's pushing back against this tide. They make all kinds of high-quality clothing and activewear, like sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. So when you buy American Giant, you create jobs in towns and cities across the country. And jobs bring pride, purpose. They stitch people together. If all that sounds good to you, visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with promo code STAPLE20.
How do you test new mattresses? Flop like a fish? Inspect every square inch? Or order online and just hope for the best? You could test mattresses any number of ways, or let Mattress Warehouse's proprietary diagnostic tests narrow down the selection for you. Visit a store near you to try Bed Match, the test that's matched millions. So where would you look to find the perfect mattress? In a little mattress store or Mattress Warehouse? Visit mattresswarehouse.com.